Hello out there, and doing a bit of a follow-up, a long-term follow-up about this Spyderco Manbug. And this Manbug here is in V-Toku2 Steel, and when Spyderco released this knife, this sprint run last year, I decided to pick it up for a couple reasons. One, I wanted to get an idea of what the V-Toku was all about and how it would perform, and if it was going to be a really good steel, because it did have a lot of hype the way a lot of sprint run steels do get. But also, I wanted to try to EDC a small knife and use it as my primary blade and see if it could perform all the tasks that I need a daily carry knife to perform. And so I bought this with like an experiment in mind, and yeah, now I'm going to follow up. It has been a good long while, and before I get into the details of how things went and my take on everything, I do want to say that this is a time-tested design, guys. These have been around for a while, the Manbugs. I also do have the Ladybug in V-Toku2, which I'll bring out right now just for a size comparison. You can see the Manbug is just a little bit taller, you know, in almost all the dimensions, a little bit more robust. But these smaller Spydercos, they're really great knives because you can use them in a versatile number of applications. A lot of people I see will use this lanyard hole as like a keychain. A lot of people will put them in a kit or have them in their car or have them as a backup. I mean, just like a lot of good can come out of this design. Another size comparison, just for reference, if you are a traditional kind of guy, here it is, and I'm just throwing stuff on the table. But here it is next to the GEC number 6. So actually pretty decent size comparison there. And then one of my smaller like EDC kind of blades, the CRKT Squid. You can take a look at that. So the Manbug here is a pretty small knife, and it doesn't have a clip, which is already a red flag for me. But yeah, I wanted to check it out and put some use on it and see how the knife would actually perform over time and how the steel would do. And we're going to start with the steel, and then we'll get into the performance of the actual knife. The steel is a big talking point because of the V-Toku2 not being stainless. So if you take a look at this, you can see probably, if I can get it focused, you can see the line, the sandwich line, where Spyderco basically has that Sus 410 laminate sandwiching the V-Toku2. So if you've never seen steel like this, basically, they do it with HAP 40 as well, and I think they've done it with a couple others. But basically, you have one type of steel, the Sus 410, creating a sandwich of the V-Toku2, and then as we get towards the edge, the V-Toku2 just extends out from that sandwich. So basically, this whole part of the blade is Sus 410, and so it's not going to corrode as quickly as down by the edge. So it is a pretty neat concept. But as you can see, this knife definitely is showing a lot of rust beneath that line on the edge because, again, it is not corrosion resistant when you get to that V-Toku2. Now, in terms of use, I didn't actually clean this knife or do anything to keep that from happening. So I just want to be clear about that. I wanted to see how it would go and how that corrosion would look. Here in Florida, I didn't get a patina, I got rust. And that sort of tends to be the case with knives that aren't stainless with me. I get rust spots before I get patina, and I guess I could do something intentional there, but I don't. So it's definitely something to note that if you're using this knife or using this steel, you are going to have to maintain it. Just for another reference point, here is that Ladybug, and the Ladybug I have only handled like with, it hasn't cut anything, and you can see the spots that are on it. So I've handled it, it's gotten oils from my skin, and just that and not getting wiped off. So this stuff, especially in a high humidity environment like the one I'm in, will be very temperamental. So you will want to keep that in mind if you are going to work with this stuff and if you care. Now that said, I mean, you could sharpen this stuff out, you could clean it up, it'll be fine. It's not going to affect long-term usability by any means, but I did just want to show that aspect of it. Another thing when it comes to aesthetics, if you are going to use this knife, is that the Sus 410, that sandwiching steel, if we're going to keep calling it that, it is very, very soft, and so it scratches easily. And while you look at the knife like this, in this position, it looks pretty good. If I catch it in the right light, you can see a lot of scratches. And I'm having trouble. There you go. So you can see all those little scratches coming into Maybe you can't. All right, I know on this side it'll be way easier. There you go. See how scratched up it is? That's not the grind. That's just a ton of scratches just from cutting through cardboard and using the knife. So again, it's going to look pretty decent at one angle, and then you catch the light and you'll see just a lot of scratching. And that's going to happen when you, there you go. And that's going to happen when you have a steel like this. I mean, there's no way around it. There you go. There's all the scratches. So yeah, again, just another thing to keep in mind with aesthetics. If you wanted a pretty knife, maybe this kind of steel that's sandwiched by Spyderco is not the stuff to get. Whatever. All right, but that was the experiment aspect of the steel, how that would corrode. But how was it in use? And how was the model in use is the bigger question. Well, with the steel, I actually didn't get the really excellent edge retention that people expect out of V-Toku2. The sprint runs that they've had it on, the Stretch 2, the Delica, the Dragonfly, the Ladybug that you saw, they basically did it on all the Seki City Japan models, and it got a lot of great reviews for just having excellent edge retention, and I didn't see that. You know, I'll slice in some video of some of the cutting tests that I did. I used it regularly, but then I also had some like predetermined testing and some abuse, to be quite honest, that I put it through. But yeah, I didn't get great edge retention from it, and I think the reason is just that we don't have a very long cutting edge. Taking a look at the cutting edge, you know, we are dealing with about 1.75 inches, and if I'm slicing with a knife and cutting, you know, I'm distributing all of the media that I'm slicing through over the length of the edge. Well, with a Delica or a Stretch 2, you know, you have a much longer edge, and so you're distributing all that wear over a bigger, you know, a bigger size a cutting edge, and so it'll probably dull a little bit more slowly. Also with this, we do have a thinner blade stock than those other knives, so I just think that those things combined into making this knife maybe dull faster than most other V-Toku2 will. So my experience with it was that it didn't hold an edge particularly well, but like I said, I was using the knife pretty often and pretty hard also, so that definitely is a factor. It did touch up pretty nicely on the Spyderco Sharpmaker. It wasn't an issue at all for me to get a working edge back on it, so that's good, at least with a harder steel like this. As far as we go with the actual cutting and how that worked in hand, the knife was really comfortable. I mean, you can see ergonomically 1, 2, 3 actual full fingers on this, and maybe not 3 as you actually start to get comfortable, like 2.5 maybe. But the jimping and the ramp is really similar to the other models that we're used to, with like just that great ergonomic feel, sort of like the Delica. And so this knife feels wonderful when you have it in your hand. That said, when you start to cut with it, it just gets to be a little bit difficult because you don't have a lot of variation where, you know, if your hand gets tired or something, you can't just slide things around and get more comfortable and use a different grip. I mean, you're sort of stuck if you're going to use this knife with a couple of different grips, especially the more hard you use it, the harder you use it, you know, the more you need to get that like strong purchase. And so, yeah, it does tend to get... it does tend to sort of wear you down a little bit. The other thing about it is because the blade is so short, when you are cutting and breaking down boxes, you know, it's harder to stay in the cut. If you're slicing, you're going to slice out of that cut really quickly. If the knife isn't super sharp and you're trying to go for a straight long cut, you know, that's going to be a little bit difficult. So was it good for EDC? Absolutely. Was it good for like some of the heavier long-term tasks? No, it really wasn't great, but it was functional and it did get the job done. One thing I did want to note was that, yeah, like I said, guys, I did actually abuse this knife a little bit. What you can see is this is the Ladybug again. It has a nice sort of detent to pull it back into the back lock. After all the prying and the work that I did with this knife, one thing that did happen was I lost that because I started getting some play. I basically worked the knife out of its like comfort range, and so in order to get good lockup again, I had to tighten everything, and so it doesn't just drop in the way like that detent did before. But that said, it still locks up really nice, and it still functions fine. And I bet if I took it apart, I might be able to clean that stuff up. But, you know, it's possible that I just sort of warped some things and screwed it up. There are no liners in this knife, so, you know, this isn't designed for the type of use that I was putting on it, but it did hold up to it, so that is definitely a good thing. So, overall, what's the analysis? The analysis for me is that this is a great knife. It's a really, really good model. V-Toku2 or no, and I think that's the big takeaway, guys. VG10, whatever other sprints they have this in, if you're looking for a secondary kind of knife, a backup knife, a knife to have in your pocket, or a knife to loan out to someone. I mean, if you're one of those guys who has two knives and if somebody asks for a knife, you give them your backup. If this is the backup, you're giving them a great one and you're spoiling them. That's really what I think about it. I don't see it as a knife that could replace something like this. For some people, maybe, depending on the way you look at things, but for my needs and my preferences, that's never going to happen. But overall, I was just very impressed with the way that this knife did perform. I am impressed with the model. I think that, you know, it'll fit a lot of needs depending on where you are. You know, this is a knife that if I go back to Chicago or I go to New York City, this could be my main carry for a few days, and yeah, I'd never have a problem. So that's the kind of situation where I think this would be perfect. For me, my personal preference, though, is the salt version of the Manbug. This is a knife that I bring anytime I go to the beaches, anytime, you know, I'm out like on the water or anything like that. I have a good functional cutting tool that is not going to rust. Basically the opposite of this Manbug here. I do like the serrations on this one as well, so yeah, this is a very good option as well. But overall, guys, I am impressed with the model. Although it does have its limitations, if you put it in the right place, it's going to do a lot of good things for you. So any other questions, comments, complaints, suggestions, let me know down below. I really appreciate you watching this follow-up on the Spyderco Manbug, especially with the V-Toku2 Steel. All right, thanks for watching and take care. Have a good one.